Welcome back. Now for the news in detail. We start from Pakistan, whose military says if the country is forced into a war, it will respond with full force. Military spokesperson Major General Asif Ghafoor said solving the Kashmir issue through diplomatic means is Pakistan's top priority. Ghafoor said India's human rights violations in occupied Kashmir cannot be allowed to go on. He said world powers should play a role to resolve the Kashmir dispute under United Nations Security Council resolutions. Ghafoor said Pakistan will never accept any solution that does not guarantee the Kashmiris' right to self-determination. Voicing concerns over the month-long curfew, Ghafoor said the situation in occupied Kashmir is threatening regional peace. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has said the humanitarian crisis in occupied Kashmir is deepening. The Foreign Minister says Islamabad will continue to keep the world informed about the plight of Kashmiris. In a series of tweets, Qureshi said he has been contacting 2 to 4 foreign ministers every day over the Kashmir crisis. He said the crisis unfolding in the occupied valley and Indian atrocities has caught the world's attention. Qureshi said Pakistan is using all diplomatic means to fight for the rights of the Kashmiri people. He added, the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia and UAE are reaching Pakistan today to discuss the current situation in the valley. Pakistan says the technical aspects of the Kartarpur corridor have always been finalized with India. Foreign Office spokesperson Dr. Mohammad Faisal said the project will be completed by late November. Delegations from India and Pakistan met at the Atari border to decide the corridor's implementation mechanism. Faisal called on the Indian side to demonstrate political flexibility to address the remaining issues. He said Pakistan has invited the Indian side for a final meeting on the resolve the remaining sticking points. The Foreign Office spokesman said Pakistan is ready to host over 5,000 decided Sikh pilgrims. Moving on, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he will ask Parliament to call early elections next month. Today, he said this after losing a first-stage vote across party MPs looking to block a no-deal Brexit on October 31st.
21 ruling Conservative Party MPs joined opposition parties to defeat the government. The House of Commons voted 328 to 301 to take control of the parliamentary agenda. The heated discussion raged on as anti-Brexit protesters demonstrated outside Parliament. The cross-party alliance can legislate to delay Brexit following today's parliamentary debate. Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn has said the bill should be passed before elections are held. But Johnson is adamant polls come before an EU summit on October 17th if the bill is passed.
Mr. Speaker, I don't want an election. The public don't want an election. I don't believe the right honourable gentleman wants an election. But if the House votes for this bill tomorrow, the public will have to choose who goes to Brussels on October the 17th to sort this out and take this country forward.
Conservative MPs who voted against the government now face the threat of expulsion from the party. They include Winston Churchill's grandson, Nicholas Soames, and 2 former finance ministers, Philip Hammond and Ken Clarke.
Right, for more on this developing story, we go live now to London, where we are joined by our correspondent, Ollie Barrett. Thanks, Ollie, for being with us. Now, Ollie, Prime Minister Johnson has lost his working majority in the House of Commons. So, is the fate of Brexit now out of his hands?
Not entirely, not yet, but certainly it's not looking very rosy for Boris Johnson at the moment. He lost his working majority on Tuesday when an MP called Dr. Philip Lee crossed the benches and sat with the Liberal Democrats. But that situation was worsened later in the day when he lost that crucial vote, with MPs trying to take control and succeeding in doing so of parliamentary business on Wednesday. At that point, Boris Johnson and his party followed through on their threat to withdraw the party whip from the Conservative rebels who voted against the government on that issue. What that means is that 21 Conservative MPs are no longer Conservative MPs, and Boris Johnson is very definitely now running a minority government. Now, that means that any legislation he may have had hopes of passing in the next session of Parliament, if he gets there, would be incredibly difficult to do so as things stand, which raises the prospects further of a general election being required at some point in the very near future. In terms of Brexit, going back to where we started, Boris Johnson will still hope that he can fight an election, win an election and deliver the Brexit that he envisions. But that is a hard task and a huge gamble on his part.
Right, Ollie, the chances for snap elections have increased. So how close are the opposition parties to agreeing to them?
For Johnson to get a snap election approved imminently, he needs 2/3 of MPs to agree to it. It doesn't look at the moment like that would happen. The opposition Labour Party has been calling for an election for months, but at this point it says that it wants legislation to pass the House of Commons and the House of Lords and get royal assent, which would try and see off a no-deal Brexit before it would be happy to go along with voting for a general election. That will make Boris Johnson very angry indeed. He will try and make it out that the opposition Labour Party is scared of having an election campaign, and also that the opposition Labour Party wants to frustrate Brexit. But that may be where we are headed, that this legislation passes and at that point we can have an election agreed by the House of Commons. Boris Johnson wants to hold that election on October the 14th or 15th. The reason he wants to have it then is that so he can attempt to be re-elected as Prime Minister, or elected for the first time as Prime Minister by the electorate ahead of a European Union summit on October the 17th, which is seen as crucial in agreeing a deal with the European Union, if there is a deal to be agreed.
Right, Ollie, lastly, do you think a second Brexit referendum is on the cards?
It very much depends what happens in any upcoming UK general election. If Boris Johnson and his Conservative Party bring back a thumping majority in the House of Commons, then no, there will not be a second Brexit referendum. If some other result is forthcoming, then the prospect of a second referendum remains on the table. Were the opposition Labour Party to win, for example, they've said they would like to put a Brexit deal to the British public. So we could yet see one, but as I say, it very much depends on what happens in the election that we expect could be called within the next few days.
Right, Ollie Bow, thanks for the updates. Now, moving on to Hong Kong, whose chief executive, Carrie Lam, has withdrawn a controversial extradition bill. Lam announced the decision after 3 months of pro-democracy demonstrations. Lam says lingering political violence is damaging the rule of law. She said her government will consider the recommendations of police inquiry into the fundamental causes of the unrest. Meanwhile, Hong Kong's main share index surged over 4%, the strongest close in a month. Moving on, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has given European powers another 2 months to save the 2015 nuclear deal. He warned Iran is still preparing to scale down compliance with the agreement if diplomatic efforts fail. President Hassan Rouhani said Iran's talks with European powers are moving forward. The statement follows a French proposal to extend a $15 billion credit line to Iran to save the 2015 pact. Now, Iran has released 7 crew members of a seized British oil tanker 2 weeks after the UK let a detained Iranian tanker leave Gibraltar. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Abbas Mousavi says the seafarers were freed on humanitarian grounds and can leave Iran soon. He said Iran has no problem with the crew and that its issues lies with the violations committed by the ship. Meanwhile, the United States President Donald Trump has warned China a trade deal will get much tougher if he wins a second term in office. He says China's economy cannot withstand a long wait for a deal and its businesses will crumble. Trump says the U.S. is doing well in their trade negotiations with China. Earlier, Chinese Vice Premier Liu He met U.S. Republican Senators Steve Daines and David Perdue in Hong Kong. It said China is against a trade war because it is not in the interest of China, the US or the world. Trade negotiations are due to resume this month after a sharp deterioration in the last long dispute. Now, in northern Iraq, 9 ISIS militants have been killed in Nineveh province during a military operation backed by the US-led coalition. The Iraqi Joint Operations spokesman Yahya Rasool says the coalition's aircraft destroyed a tunnel in Mosul, killing the militants. A military officer says the move is part of an ongoing anti-ISIS operation by the Iraqi and US coalition. In Iraq, hundreds of thousands of people have gone missing, the victims of political and religious persecution during the Saddam era and later. The country has one of the highest counts of missing persons in the world, and their loved ones are still unable to move on, as we see in this report.
Iraq has one of the highest number of missing persons, according to the International Committee of Red Cross. The numbers range between 250,000 and well over 1 million. The discrepancy indicates both staggering loss and the difficulty of documenting such